Welcome to the Yankee Cowboy Podcast, coming to you from Dallas, Texas. Here's your host, Tim Wilkins.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. I am joined today by the co-host of co-hosts, Chris, joining me once again. And today, we're talking, it is the round of 16 cutoff race, Bristol Motor Speedway, arguably one of my favorites in the entire NASCAR Cup Series. Chris, thank you for joining me. We're going to have this conversation, as we always do, about sports. This is going to be a fun one.
Yes, sir.
So, round of 16. We had Darlington, we had Kansas, and arguably now we have one of the most difficult racetracks in all of racing, Bristol Motor Speedway, better known as the stadium of all stadiums.
The last great Coliseum.
It truly is, man. It is a phenomenal, it is on my bucket list of tracks to go to still, and to get to watch a race there. Arguably, I think we could both agree that it's sometimes the day race or the afternoon race compared to the night race. There's been debate about which one's better to go to, the fall or the spring race, as they call it. But still an amazing track over the years, has a lot of history behind it. Great race to cut off the round of 16, in my view. But we're going to recap what happened a little bit here, our predictions on some things. I think, Chris, we got a lot to go into here.
Yeah, we do. So, starting out and obviously don't want to hog up the whole conversation, but starting out at Darlington to kick off the NASCAR playoffs, Kyle Larson scoring the victory in the Southern 500, to lock himself into the next round and also pick up those 10 additional bonus points, which carries over to the next round. And then last week in Kansas, Tyler Reddick picking up the win. The 2311 organization has won 3 of the last 4 races at Kansas, and the 45 car has won 3 of those races with three different drivers: Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace, and now Tyler Reddick. So, and then Denny Hamlin obviously won in the spring. So Toyota has won the last 4 races there. So, I think one of the big storylines heading into this weekend's race has been the regular season champion Martin Truex Jr., who, had those additional 15 bonus points, 2 terrible races, including last week, wrecking out very early on lap 4 of the event with a flat tire. He is now 7 points below the cut line. When you look at Joey Logano now, last year's champion, he's 11th in points. Huge move by Paul Wolfe and the 22 team at the end to decide to take 2 tires. He was running about 15th and ended up, squeaking out a 5th place finish, and he's now 12 points above the cut line. So looking towards this weekend, give people a quick rundown. So obviously Kyle Larson locked in with his win from Darlington, Tyler Reddick locked in from his win in Kansas, Denny Hamlin's 3rd, William Byron's 4th, Brad Keselowski 5th, Ryan Blaney is 6th, Kyle Busch is 7th, Ross Chastain 8th, Chris Buescher 9th, Christopher Bell is 10th, Joey Logano 11th, Kevin Harvick now is on the bubble. He's in 12th. He is 7 points ahead of, as we mentioned, Martin Truex Jr., who's 13th, Bubba Wallace, who crashed in stage 2 last week, blew a tire. He is, he's almost in a must win. He's 14th. And then the 2 bottom drivers in the standings, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Michael McDowell, both are absolute must wins. They are 15th and 16th in the playoff standings.
So just asking you this, Chris, do you foresee, if we have a circumstance here, we'll go through some different scenarios here, but I think barring any crazy catastrophes here, which may happen because it is Bristol, things can and will happen. It's probably arguably one of you want to talk about a restrictor plate jackpot of stupidity. Bristol is exactly that, but on a short track basis. If any one of the top 10 drivers have a catastrophic day, do you see them not making the top 12 there? Do you see anybody maybe towards the bottom of that 12 or maybe even the top dropping down to maybe threaten their continuation on past the round of 12?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe,
I think when you look at the standings, you probably can look down to about, I would say down to about maybe Blaney and Kyle Busch. Blaney's 25 points ahead. Kyle Busch is 24 points above the cut line. Essentially, they just need to get some stage points in both stages, stay out of trouble, and they should be relatively safe. I think if you're above Blaney, so Keselowski, Byron, and Hamlin, I mean, you're all but a lock. I think they actually have a mathematical chance of locking in fair during the actual race itself. But yeah, if you're below Busch, we look at Chastain, Buescher, Bell, Logano, and Harvick. I mean, they're all extremely vulnerable. Truex, obviously, and the crazy thing about Truex is if he can advance to the next round because of those bonus points carrying over from the regular season, he would propel himself back to the number one spot. So that's how big of a swing it can be if he can just get out of the first round. He'll go immediately back to the top of the board because of the points, the bonus points that he's accrued in the regular season. So yeah, I would say that those are probably the guys you got to look at. Truex, honestly, his record at Bristol's not been great. I think he only has 1 or 2 top 10 finishes there, and which is actually surprising. But yeah, you look at Bubba Wallace, you look at Ricky Stenhouse, you look at Michael McDowell. I mean, they're really kind of in a must win at this point, and or need the folks ahead of them to have a really bad night. So.
and that's where I'm thinking here is that, arguably, I didn't think maybe 25 points. I thought 25 points might be enough to cover if you have a bad enough race, but and you finish maybe 35th or something on a wreck, and you're still going to be, I think, in the top 12, but you're going to be on the bottom of that top 12. Now, I'm not saying Byron, Hamlin, and Keselowski can take a race off, but they're going to be trying to be competitive here to kind of secure themselves further down the road. I think there's a level of aggression that there's a fine line there. I'm uniquely taken back by Kevin Harvick and his last year at Stewart-Haas, and still obviously competing, but he's not competing at a high enough level here. I think Harvick has got to have a decent show to continue on here. That's obvious based on where his standings are, but he's got to go. And that's the thing. He has to have the level of aggression of a 20-year-old kid, in a sense, where he's got to be driving for his life, because you're right. If Martin Truex Jr., let's just say hypothetically, man, that Ross Chastain has a blown out tire, Buescher has somewhat of an incident in the back, Christopher Bell has something different happen, Logano does his usual safe play and he competes, and gets himself a top 5, top 10, which he has the potential to do. And then you have, Kevin Harvick's basically got to win and be in the top 10 here to save himself, maybe a top 15, top 20,
Yeah, no, I think, obviously Harvick, he's been, beyond carrying the flagship for Stewart-Haas Racing, who's having, the epitome of a down year. But Harvick just finds a way to he and Rodney Childers just find a way to grind out a relatively decent finish. He somehow finds a way to do it. So, it wouldn't surprise me. Heck, it wouldn't surprise me if Harvick finds a way to run up in the top 2 or 3 and maybe contend for a win. He almost won this race a couple of years ago if it wasn't for Chase Elliott, blocking him after they made contact late in the race. So, Harvick, and then last year Harvick got hot late in the playoffs. So it's not inconceivable that Kevin Harvick could have a good race. Obviously the Fords have struggled on a lot of these bigger racetracks, the 1.5 miles that make up, the 2 mile tracks that make up the majority of the schedule. So getting onto a short track where the aerodynamic and maybe some of the horsepower deficiencies are not there as much. I think that this could be a track where Ford could sneak out a victory for sure.
I just, not to say I disagree with you here. I think the blame isn't so much on the manufacturer; it's the car in itself. I mean, I'm not going to completely go be a Debbie Downer here on the cars and the new car anymore, but we heard this before, and the package is very difficult. And in the short track package, we've seen that before. The short track package, even the mile and a half, they have some really strong need to get some work done there. And I think hopefully this race for the fans watching this race is an exciting race because obviously the implications that it has. But if it becomes a bore fest, the rating ain't going to be there. Even if it's a cutoff race, if it becomes and you understand what I mean by this, Bristol over the years has become of this. It used to be bottom groove, top groove, middle groove. It used to be it's a slick racetrack, obviously now, but obviously there's resin, there's all of this going on with the racetrack. But if it becomes a boring race and it's just a single file, I call it a lap fest because that's what it becomes after a certain period of time. This whole point we're talking about here is a very different scenario. I think if they say green flag for a while and there's not a lot of big wrecks, it's going to be the top 10 in points here are going to be just fine.
Yeah. No, that's true. And the short track package has really struggled. Obviously last year this race was marred with tire issues because of the new car and the higher speeds with the wider tires. There were a lot of issues with tires. So Goodyear did do some pretty extensive tire testing this year. So fingers crossed that tires won't prove to be an issue. But if that's the case, track position could mean a lot. So so we'll definitely see what happens on Saturday night, which obviously means qualifying will be important. Is getting a good qualifying spot, knowing that track position could be a significant factor on Saturday night.
So I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. So you're saying that if Martin Truex, let's just say finds himself 7 points over the competition in the top 12, he will somehow leapfrog the two other guys that already locked themselves in to the round of 12.
Yep. So the way it works in the playoffs is the bonus points that you accumulate during the regular season, or playoff points that you accumulate during the regular season, those carry through to each of the rounds. So essentially what'll happen is, if he does move on, all those bonus points, including the 15 bonus points for being the regular season champion, will carry over, and that'll actually propel him back up to the number 1 seed in the round of 12. So
okay.
So that's why,
Yeah, it looks a little deceiving when you look at the internet now on the standings, because obviously his point total is down, in the, I believe it's the 13th position.
Yep.
With 2,056 points. But you're saying that with the round of 12, the points kind of reset a little bit based on some bonus implications and things like that. So
yeah, you'll do an entire reset after this round, just based on the results, but that's also carrying over points from the regular season, also in the round of 16. So it can get a little challenging. That's why, I think if you're Truex, you have to, you've worked so hard for an entire season, have 2 bad races, and conceivably, if things don't go well, the highest you can finish in points is 13. Actually, well, technically, you can finish as high as 5th, because once the not to get confusing for the folks listening, but as the rounds drop, there still is the ability, even though if you're eliminated from championship contention, you could still move up in the points after those resets. So conceivably, if Truex does not make it to the round of 12, he could realistically finish as high as 5th in the final standings after the race in Phoenix.
Which I'm not discrediting the fact of the race team here. I just think that you have two arguably difficult races at one of the two different. I mean, Darlington in of itself, Chris, I think we can both attest to. It's a crazy difficult race. It's a Southern 500. It's a traditional crown jewel race of of NASCAR. So with Larson winning that race, obviously continues the tradition of Hendrick Motorsports winning the Southern 500, in my view. And so when you go to a race like Kansas, that's been historically really strong for Toyotas, you got to come to a racetrack now that's going to be arguably on this level playing field for the rest of the contending drivers. And I think Bristol, arguably, regardless of what people think about the way the new track is, it is for sure one of the best racetracks in the entire country. It just, I mean, we're gonna have. It really depends on the package that the car, how they improve on that tire that you talked about earlier. But I see, unfortunately, I see something happening to Christopher Bell here or Ross Chastain that falls them out of contention. And not saying anything negative towards them as drivers, but they always seem to find themselves on the other side of some situations here. RFK Racing, for them to actually make both drivers to be in contention for the playoff, arguably is a monumental feat in itself. And I have to credit Brad for, I mean, I know a lot of people have either a love or hatred towards Brad Keselowski, but he put the team on his shoulders, man. I think we can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at and say, obviously him leaving Team Penske at the end of 2021 and taking over in a minority ownership stake at Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, and really seeing the transformation, the turnaround within essentially about an 18 month period is really incredible. Chris Buescher obviously had 3 wins towards the end of the season. Yeah, I mean, you got to look at RFK, and they've definitely been the best Ford team this year. As I would say they've been better than Penske, been better than Stewart-Haas and some of the other teams. So yeah, I'd say RFK has definitely carried the Blue Oval banner, probably the most consistent this entire season.
My question to you really stems to this: with the amount of drivers you have towards the back of the point situation here, do they fall to their own demise here of aggressionness and just? I mean, listen, Joey Logano, is a gifted, talented driver that he is, he's been okay here, right? He's been okay at Bristol.
Yeah.
I think Ross Chastain has got himself in trouble.
Yeah, Joey's got 2 wins in the night race at Bristol, and actually back to back in 2014 and 2015. So I think you definitely can't count the 22 car out for sure.
And that's where I think nothing against Buescher, and I don't discredit Buescher here. I just think that unfortunately, he's been really good at in the last month or so. The season he's been really good. Now, do I see that
winner of this race? Defending winner of the night race at Bristol, and won it last year. So that was RFK. That was first win for RFK as an organization.
And that's a very, very valid point here. So I think legitimately, if we're talking about who actually gets eliminated, I think unless you have a night of your life type situation drive-wise or I don't see Stenhouse moving on. I don't see I as much as I give credit to Michael McDowell for doing a phenomenal job at the road course, I don't see him moving on. And I think I hate to be the negative Nancy here in this room, but I don't see Bubba Wallace moving on. And I don't see that happening because it's Bristol, baby. and that's just it's you got to know. And I just had it happen on iRacing. I'll talk about this, but you get dragged into other people's crap, and it's not your own fault. But guess what? You're a victim of it, and you only can withstand so much of it before you're parked. So I think legitimately, I see. I'll go on a limb here, and I think it's disappointing for me to go on a limb like this, but I think Kevin Harvick will be eliminated.
Mm.
And I don't. let me just preface this with this. I don't discount the talent of Kevin Harvick here. I think with this point scenario and the amount of aggression that you're going to see from Truex, and you have to have something change here on the from the 9th to the 12th position to make me more comfortable with those four guys. Like I either one of these guys has to win 9 through 12 for me to see them go long term through the playoffs, or this is the end of the road for them. I don't see them. So let's just say hypothetically, Chris, that these guys 9 through 12 make it through this round. I don't see them going to the round of 8. I don't see any of them doing that because the talent between the 4th to the 8th position is so high and it's so intense that the level of, I would say, the margin of error is so small that I don't see. I really don't. I mean, Kevin Harvick, he's got to win or go home. I mean, that's just my view. Same thing with Martin Truex. At that point, when you're 7 points behind, you got to hope and pray that about 12 other drivers have a bad day. Really. I mean, or one of these guys in the top 4, Denny Hamlin has a bad day. And he finishes 7 positions, and these guys, and Byron moves up, and these guys slide around. And there's got to be something catastrophic here that happens in the race that for these guys to change positions, but I don't see that happening. These guys are too good.
Yeah.
That's why they're top 12. I can forecast maybe something happening with Christopher Bell or Chris Buescher or Ross Chastain. Ross's aggression alone will get him in trouble. But
yeah, he's been a little more toned down, especially after the whole deal with Rick Hendrick early in the year. He's kind of, I feel like in a way, is kind of, and I don't think, and Trackhouse as a whole has not been as strong as they were last year. Ross does have the one win, but at Nashville. But other than that, they've missed the mark more than they've hit it this year compared to how they were last year. So, look, kind of my prediction. I think honestly, I think where everyone is now, I think they stay. I think Harvick makes it. I don't think Truex makes it, only simply at the fact of they've had 2 really bad races. I mean, they were bad. They were just bad at Darlington, and they had bad luck at Bristol. Bristol's not been a great track for Truex in the past. And Truex is one of those guys that I don't think he doesn't have that level of resiliency that when you look at compared to a Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick can take a 10th to 15th place race car and find a way to finish 7th or 8th.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yeah, Truex, if the car's not where it needs, I mean, when Truex is good, he's good. When Truex is bad, he is just there. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that the current top 12 in the standings is going to be the top 12 after the race on Saturday night. Whether that, obviously there could be some movement up and down, but I think in terms of the guys that are in the bottom 4, I'm gonna roll with those guys.
I mean, I appreciate that, man, because I honestly was on the fence with Truex, and I think as a regular season champion, you have to give him his. I'm not saying his flowers, but you got to give him his respect where it's due. You perform well, but we've seen regular season champions fall before. Jeff Gordon being one of them with this new playoff format over the years. The guy as strong as Jeff over the regular season comes down to the playoffs and he's out. He loses the playoff, loses the championship. I think I don't discredit any of the ability of these race car drivers, but Bristol is Bristol. It's Bristol, baby. It is no other. There is no other cliche. There is no other things. If you have ever watched a history of this race throughout our childhood or even before, Bristol is unpredictable. It is what you think. And I'm glad it's not a dirt race anymore. I am happy it's back on the asphalt.
Yep.
Because I don't care. Not saying I'm not a dirt fan for all y'all listening at home, but to me, that track did not need dirt to make it great. That track was a phenomenal racetrack before, and you're putting a gimmick on a probably arguably a track that doesn't need one. So, that's just my view on that. But I think I think we have some really good expectations of this race. I'm hoping it's a good race, man.
Yeah,
I really do. I don't want it to be some single file for 500 laps, dude. I would be
Yeah.
pissed off at the world if it's that long, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, before we wrap up, we've got
Mhm.
some silly season news here.
we're talking about the silliness. Yes, we are.
Yeah. Talk a little bit of NASCAR news, one bit of NASCAR news, and a little bit of silly season news. So, one thing that was announced yesterday was that the heading, the round of 12, with it being Texas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval, which will be the last road course of the year. The Charlotte Roval will reinstitute stage cautions. So all the road courses.
Boo.
Yeah,
Boo.
I agree. All the road courses this
Boo.
year obviously did. They still counted stages, but they didn't throw a caution flag.
I'm sorry. It ruins the as a race car, dude. As a race fan, doesn't that kind of just ruin the entire idea of road course racing? Oh, I'm going to run 12 laps under a fuel run, and then I'm going to pit.
Yeah.
So then everyone gets on the same fuel strategy. It's a fucking
exactly.
shit. Excuse my language. It's a shit show.
Or everybody pits with a lap to go in the stage, or 2 laps to go in the stage, or 3 laps, because pits close with 2 to go, and then it just flips everyone over there compared to letting a race play out naturally. So NASCAR says, quote, that they want the officiating of the races to be equal in all of them, that would be under the same rules in terms of cautions versus no cautions. I think that's bullshit. NASCAR just need NASCAR's
It's called a cop out. Have you ever heard one?
Yeah, NASCAR's insulting our intelligence. They just want more cautions.
Well, you gotta get some ad buys in there, dude. This call to the bullpen is brought to you by AT&T. As baseball will kindly remind us when we're watching baseball, but Chris, I just that's a terrible idea. Terrible idea. All NASCAR's front. That is worse than having a race at the USC Coliseum. That's just, I don't know what was worse, this or that, but I mean, it's.
Yeah. And then before we close out, looks like 2 pieces of rumors / silly season news. So Colleague Racing has been teasing a driver announcement for the number 31 car after the departure of Justin Haley at the end of the season to head over to Rick Ware Racing. General manager or president of team Chris Rice had posted a photo today shaking just what appeared to be an arm and a hand, and folks have done some forensic discovery and by all
way too much time on your hands, people.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
By all intents and purposes, according to people, it looks to appear that Daniel Hemrick will drive the number 31 car in 2024. He currently drives the team's Xfinity Series cars, and then was the 2021 Xfinity Series champion when he was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. And then Live Fast Motorsports, which is no longer lives and is not fast. They're the back half of normally the last place car every single week. The number 78 car appears that the co-owners of that team, BJ McLeod and Matt Tifft, are looking to sell their charter, which they've had since 2021. I could be wrong on that, but it was 2020, 2021. But they could be looking to sell their charter. As people know, these charters have gone up, tenfold in value. So probably looking in the neighborhood of between about 25 to probably $40 million for a charter. But there could be a possibility that the charter could be sold to Spire Motorsports, and then could be leased. And then in turn, that would be leased to Trackhouse Racing to enable a seat for last year's Truck Series 2022 Truck Series champion Zane Smith to move up to the Cup
That sounds
Series.
way too complicated for us small town bird lawyers out there. And I'm going to go on a limb and tell you that I don't see any of that happening. I see Zane Smith going somewhere else.
A lot of the rumors there's good sources just from reading, Sports Business Journal's Adam Stern, who's pretty reliable when it comes to stories. It would appear, and just on the, it would appear
if it's not Bob Podcrast telling me what the deal is, I don't believe it, sir. Okay,
yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, we're subject to to see what happens over the next couple of days. But if indeed Zane Smith is heading to Trackhouse Racing, another huge. I can't even
Well,
say it
it's
enough.
another big signing, dude. I think they just announced this today. Shane Van Ginsbergen. Good, I probably butchered that name.
Now you got it. SVG, man. You got it.
SVG is heading to Trackhouse to run in all three NASCAR National Series in 24.
Yep.
So that tells me that I don't believe that. I just see that legitimately there's going to be a lot of driver movement here.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see where I think Zane Smith goes personally to Stuart Haas. That's where I see him landing.
Yeah.
And I don't, and I think we can talk about this more.
Yeah.
In another episode. But I see Zane Smith going to Stuart Haas because of Tony Stewart's willingness to go younger in the car, and also his talent is unquestionable when it comes to racing. I think that's where he's going to land. Also, Noah Gragson getting his job or reinstated to NASCAR. That's relatively news. I'll be very interested to see what happens with the 78 charter, and I'll tell you why. Because I think this is a situation here that we as sports fans have really put to the back burner, and it's, does Dale Jr. run a cup team? And the conversation, that's probably a topic for another discussion.
Yep.
But I think legitimately, if this charter auction, keeps on going, he's gonna dip his toe in there and see what's up. He obviously has the financial backing. He has the money to do it. Now, does he want to foot the entire bill? Probably not. So that's where I can see the 78, which, by the way, used to be Furniture Row, right, back in the day, with Martin Truex, and then they sold that. The ownership sold that off to BJ McLeod.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I mean that charter's moved around so many times. The origin of that one is probably two or three different teams. So yeah, I didn't know.
So it's definitely showed some history over the years. I think Dale Jr. Dips his toe in here, and I think I know you're talking about Spear Motorsports buying that charter. I can see Dale Jr. saying, "Hey, I'll offer you 25 and move on." I mean, listen, I know they're going to try to auction off the 40, but sorry, man, but your team is not worth $40 million.
Yep.
If you were Hendrick Motorsports, okay, cool, I could see you doing it. But with the team, I believe is that a Chevy team right now?
Yep. Yeah, they're a Chevrolet team this year. Obviously on the lower end of the Chevrolet.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously they're probably getting their support from ECR for engines and chassis. Or Robert Yates. I'm just trying to think. I just think that's the silly season in my view is. I know it's a silly season, but I'm very interested to see where the truck drivers start moving around. That's just where I'm forecasting where I want to go. Because I mean, nothing personal with a lot of the truck drivers, but with the amount of Toyota rides that are kind of drying up here, they're going to have to go to other equipment, and that's a very delicate conversation to have as well. I just see nothing personal with Haley Deegan. That whole deal is that chicken heads that stupidity fest has gone long enough in my view. And I'm not. I used to be a great fan of hers, but sorry, you haven't had the results to back it up to be in that car, especially the quality of car or truck in this case. Thor Sport. I believe she's in Thor Sport, correct? Is that the correct team?
Yep, correct.
So that's the top level team. So if you have results for that to back it up, especially not making the playoffs, it's a difficult thing to talk about, man. It's a difficult conversation that I think a lot of adults need to have in the room and be adults in the room. And maybe she just needs to drive SRX and just bring money and have fun racing. But we'll take a step back and find our lower quality team and find some. It could be a team situation, but I think legitimately, and I'm going to try to end it here, is that the truck drivers are going to have more movement than probably anybody in the Cup Series. legitimately. I think there's probably maybe 3 with Denny Hamlin announcing his new contract with, which by the way, I think we could talk about this in a second. If he didn't get a new deal at Gibbs, I could have seen him getting that charter for the 78 and moving that thing over and buying it because he wants to ride. I could see him having 3 charters. I could have seriously seen that happen with him because he's that aggressive. He wants to be driving still. But glad to see him get a contract to stay there. But that being said, man, we'll end it here. I appreciate you joining me, Chris, on this awesome conversation about previewing the Bristol cutoff race. A little bit of silly season, a little bit of off-season stuff. It's always a good time. Till next week or 2 weeks, who knows? We'll have some fun.
Indeed, we will.
All righty. Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you.